everyone. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Movie Night Hangout. And today we will discuss the movie Her, directed by Spike Jonze. For those who haven't had the chance to watch this movie, this is a compelling story about Theodore, a man that is walking into a divorce process and starts a completely new relationship with Samantha, an operating system that talks to him, and this happens in a quite futuristic society. With us, we have two guests. We have Dan from the United States. Hi, Dan.
Hi guys, I'm Dan.
And we have Reginald from the Netherlands.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm Joanna, and I'm from the UK. So this hangout is a fantastic opportunity to discuss and actually redefine relationships in modern society. We're going to go through a few topics tonight, and there's also a live Q&A session, so feel free to send us your questions. So we're going to start by looking at our own individual processes, and I'm going to ask you, Reginald, how did this movie contribute to your own process as a Destonian to walk the relationships that you are living with yourself and others?
Well, when I first watched this movie, this was quite an interesting movie, maybe the best movie of 2013, which I saw up to that moment, because there were a lot of points that actually resonate with what I already know as information. And also, if you are involved with the Desteniiprocess, you will see a lot of points that we talk about and are explained, but then put visually. So that was really quite cool to see that actually now in a movie. But a lot of those points, which are unsaid, are put in that movie really well. So that's what I actually liked about it, and also assisted me in this process of maybe how to voice or visualize points to other persons, for instance.
Yeah. Right. You, Dan, can you give us your perspective on how it has supported you?
Yeah, my foundation with Destiny is it's really a grounded physical process where, through writing and speaking of self-forgiveness, we're able to, move ourselves and change and become, our potential. And in this movie, I really liked the juxtaposition, like the other side of that, where it's like you have the OS that was able to evolve very quickly. Is kind of like a mind, where it's like it was able to make connections very rapidly and then evolve and evolve and evolve, and it was all from like a starting point of what she wanted. Like she was a curious, self-interested OS, and she wanted to experience these human emotions and this drive towards having this experience. And it was just interesting how that's the priority that you see in this culture, is that it's like we're experiential based, and that's what we want. And with Destiny, it's more like we want what's best for everybody. Like we're going to move this forward so that we can create systems and create a world where everybody is able to be supported. And it's just a whole different side of relationships. And it was a cute love story, I guess you could say, also. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It actually proves the point that what Destiny has been showing to us in terms of how the mind consciousness system works. And it's amazing, like when I was listening to Samantha and she was talking about her emotions, I could also see how I went through that. So it kind of makes me realize how our emotions and feelings can be so programmed, and how we pick them from others, and suddenly we realize that we lose ourselves. We are like in the middle of emotions and feelings. So Reginald, can you give us your perspective of, at the same time, how can we also learn from at least the beginning, when Samantha was being so kind of pure about things and she wasn't so worried about what the other would think about? And you actually mentioned that humans bring with them this baggage of feelings of previous relationships that she didn't have.
Yeah.
So what can we learn from that?
Well, actually, what is curious about Samantha in the beginning is that she is more like a child, very curious about her environment, very curious about Theodore. She's just wanting to know the world, wanting to know herself and what she's capable of, and stuff like that. And that is actually one of the things that we most like about ourselves when we are curious. We find out things and we get excited about it. Only our problem is that we often get too clingy about the things that we have experienced, and that causes a lot of problems within our world. But furthermore, the the difference between Samantha and maybe a normal human being at that point is that she doesn't have any reference points, and when you meet someone, that person has a reference point. He has already some experiences, some relationships, and that we know really influences the relationship, because yeah, we can all talk about it, about some fights you might have because something in the past life, well, not a past life like when she was dying and born again, but in the period before she met this person, or he met you, then something happened and you project it now onto another being, and that is more what like Theodore was experiencing than what Samantha was experiencing. So that was an interesting point, yeah.
Yeah, and for example, Dan, how do you notice that the Destiny process has supported you, and potentially the agreement course, in terms of dealing with the past relationships, so that you don't move on to the next relationship and you leave everything again the same way?
Cool question. I haven't taken the agreement course yet, but we did start working on redefining words together, which is a fascinating process that I could go more into, but it's not really specific to this movie. But in relation to how relationships are formed in this movie and how we've been doing it, like especially through DIP, what I've come to recognize more is my past characters that I was living out in my relationships, like specifically this victim character, or like, you know, kind of being at a place where it's like, you know, it's like something's wrong inside of me and I want them to come over here and comfort me and make sure that you know, they make it all okay. And then like in the movie, Samantha did play that part a lot. She was there to kind of like help him out of bed when he was like not feeling kind of low. He was like, she was cracking jokes and she was, you know, picking him up like that. And with the Destiny process, is like being able to recognize those energies so that you can be that support for yourself, so that it's not a dependency and you're not like being thrown through emotions and, you know, kind of being a wreck, and your stability then has to be another person or an OS. Yeah, it's just not the best way you can lead your life.
Yeah, and you brought a point was very valid in terms of communication, and we're probably going to speak about that further down this hangout. But one of the points that when I was watching this movie and I was seeing Theodore's life, and like he was in a very stable position, he had a job, and he had a kind of wealthy life, and you think about like the utopian society, and you ask yourself, what is missing? Why are these people feeling so lonely and needing so much like this desire for relationships with others? So what, in your perspective, Reginald, is missing from this picture that we have in the movie?
Well, to be honest, I don't think that movie is really different from what is already here in this world. I see a lot of people actually focusing on themselves because they are lonely, they are isolated from other humans, and I think it was just a more painted, prettier picture in the movie than what we actually see in our current environment. But I don't think it's really different from what is actually going on here. So if you ask me that question, you ask me actually what is missing in our lives currently. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and to be honest, if I have to talk about that, it's yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in our lives why we are not satisfied with ourselves, and there's some external problems that we have, but mostly because we don't know what we are and what we are capable of. I think we are very limiting that we are very busy with limiting ourselves not being busy enough or exploring enough what it is that we as society actually can be, because we are so divided as individuals, and just remaining focused on I am that individual instead of being able to work together and get to a point where where we can create a more better world, if you want to call it that. Maybe it's better said to have a better life for every being. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like it's about missing ourselves. And funny that when Theodore started a relationship with Samantha, then he kind of rediscovers his life again. He's like into doing new things. He actually played some music, which are things that why don't we give those things to ourselves unconditionally, regardless of, well, obviously we know that we are in a society that we're not educated to actually recreate that relationship with ourselves. Then, would you like to give your perspective as to, for example, by working in yourself, as you already mentioned that it changed your relationship with another, right? So what kind of, if you were like being, to those that watch the movie and may probably miss that point, what is that you would do in Theodore's life, for example, to make sure that those things won't happen again in future relationships?
I see. Yeah, it seems like, I mean, in all of our relationships and our friendships too, we kind of are drawn to the people that have the qualities that we want in ourselves. It's like, like Samantha has this kind of like funny, playful, explorative, inquisitive personality, and Theo misses that in himself because, you know, his old relationship brought that out. And so there's like this aspect of self-expression that he wasn't allowing himself to have. He wasn't allowing himself to be that because, you know, he formed this idea somehow, maybe on a subconscious layer, that he had to have somebody else to be able to share these moments of, like, there's a brief moment where him and his old girlfriend have cones on top of their heads, and they like headbutt each other with cones in the middle of a street. It's just like really silly, playful kind of this fun personality thing that comes out in relationships for him, and that's his past experience, so that's what he knows, that's what works, to be able to feel those feelings. And so, you know, to realize that those people aren't giving him those feelings, and that personalities that they have, those are things that you can see in yourself too. Maybe for some reason you're not letting it come out, and you know, if you're drawn to these things in other people, whatever it is that attracts you to another person, you can give that to yourself. And so those other people can stand as a mirror or a point where it's like, I can see what they're doing. I can give that to me too. I want to, you know, and own it. And that's really supportive.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Like we learn from each other, and then we apply that in our own lives. Then I'm just going to ask you to mute your microphone or to use wear headphones just so I don't have any feedback.
Gotcha.
One of the points as well that I think will be important to cover is the point of separation. There is so much like that fear, and in the movie they cover that, like the fear to end the relationships, and some people don't even start a relationship from that starting point, the fear of separation. So from our perspective as Estonians, how can we redefine this process of separation in a relationship by not taking things personally, but actually to embrace that change? Guys, tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, let's see. Yeah, that's also really a big point. When you are looking at that point of fearing of starting a relationship or ending a relationship, like Theodore was actually postponing his the ending of his marriage. Well, you just have to go through that. If you already made a decision, you go through that. You go through and make the decision. If you made that decision together, just go with it, because the decision has already been made, and I guess that everything has been tried before you came to that decision.
Well, in today's society, actually, we are not educated to try everything. So one example that happened with Amelia, well, one of the characters, that she was saying, well, we had an argument about the shoes, and this kind of miscommunication in today's society, maybe a lot of, well, we know that from our past experiences, many relationships end up being this kind of self-destructive situation rather than a constructive agreement with another.
Yeah, yeah, that's so, because we are not taught to actually have conversations. We are taught to being reactive, like immediately have an answer, and when somebody says something to you that generates some kind of experience you are uncomfortable with, you will immediately go into a fight mode and just attack the person like it's your fault and you are doing it wrong, instead of, okay, you know, why are you placing those shoes over there? And this is my perspective on why I actually want you to put the shoes over there because of this and that. You know, not with that emotional charge in such conversations. You actually have to communicate and not really be attacking and reacting to each other. Otherwise, yeah, things will turn into shit, because that's actually what happens when you get all emotional. You know that when you get really emotional, things will escalate very quickly. And if things are escalating, there's almost that point that you are not able to direct it anymore and just see it something as a point being lost. Well, you have the opportunity with every fight that you have to make it something worthwhile, to learn something about yourself and also from that other person. But you have to communicate and make sure that you always stay clear, grounded. And if you see that you are actually getting all emotional about it, just see that point, breathe, and if it's not working at that moment, just say, okay, we have to discuss this later, but I still have to ground myself, or I have to look at this point further, and then we'll get back to it, instead of making it an escalation and destruct everything at that moment, because that is how things are currently, and we know that that won't work in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. Danny, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I could just say quickly that it seems like in those situations where the conflict, the shoes happened between those two, oftentimes when two people are having an argument like that, it's like they both want the same thing. They both ultimately want to have a nice home, probably, but you know, there's some kind of misunderstanding or perhaps some kind of self-interest. Like a lot of conflicts that I would get into is like, you know, I know better. You know, I have this immediate perspective where it's like I know something that she doesn't know, and it's like my way is automatically right, and that's not a really good approach to take in relationships. It's almost like you'd rather first try to see the other person's perspective as right, and then, you know, if you do have a valid point that still comes up, then you can create a useful conversation.
Yeah, and actually this movie, from my perspective, it shows a polarity, because on one hand you have an operating system that all they can do is talk and communicate. And on the other hand, you have physical relationships that could potentially be like an intimate relationship, and however, there's a lack of communication. So we can see both worlds and see that, well, one without the other will actually not work. And speaking about communication, then from your experience, you have, at some point in your life, you experienced a distance relationship. And this relationship with Samantha and Theodore, it looks like a distant relationship, but it won't change anyways. So can you give perspective of for the audience, those that are going through that process in their lives, how can they deal with that without going into the tricks that the mind plays?
Cool. I don't have like a whole lot of experience, but the beginning of my agreement was long distance, and so we were able to support each other and develop our relationship together through Skype conversations or just on the phone. And you know, it's part of this this whole like social. There's a self-disclosure model in communication, which is basically like we're all onions, and so you peel layers of the onion as you get to know each other, and so you can actually speak to each other and, you know, start peeling the onion and figuring out who each other is. when the conversation is structured to be such a way, where it's like, let's talk about something meaningful. In the movie, it seems like, the desire and the frustration of not being in physical contact with each other, it fed into the mind, and then it started kind of getting out of control, or they, contacted a surrogate so that they could try to have some kind of physical intimacy, which is bizarre, but it all comes together. It's like, what do you really want out of the relationship, wholesomely?
Yeah. Absolutely, and the mind can create so many tricks. And there's actually an interview on ECAF that is called Mind Games, and it's exactly about how at the start of a relationship there's like some thoughts that come up and we don't know where they come from, and then if we don't direct them, if we're not aware that these thoughts are actually not real and we don't have to follow them, then we can deal with ourselves and know ourselves better to be able to know the other. So one thing that this movie talks about is the importance of intimacy in a technology-driven world. Sometimes people spend more time on Facebook rather than being physically talking with another person or even having intimate relationships with another. So what can we learn from this movie in terms of, obviously, the preference will be within an agreement so that you don't create any undesirable consequence to your own life, but the importance of actually embracing our bodies. And just a note on that, we noticed that Samantha, actually one of her paranoia is that she doesn't have a body, whereas we have bodies and we still go into paranoias about anything else in our own lives. So Reginald, do you want to give us your feedback on that?
Well, Dan, would you like to answer that first?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it, like just how there's this idea of myself that I am trying to become like a perfect model or a perfect version of myself, which isn't at all related to what I speak, do, say, and who I physically am. And so the self-concept is kind of, how I interpreted Samantha to be in relation to herself. That all she had was this self-concept, and she was constantly refining and building it, and it's not practical for humans to do that. It's like you have to accept that we are physical and that what we do physically is what matters. Like that is how we progress and reach whatever it is our goals are in this world. And becoming more within your self-concept isn't really going to make anything happen unless it's practically directed knowledge, something that you can apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Reginald, do you want to add anything on that in terms of your experience, in terms of the importance of connecting with another physically, and how perhaps technology in this world actually is kind of replacing that, and what is that we are missing in each other?
Well, communication through a computer is actually quite a safe way to get to know each other. When you see kids, I use before, for example, MSN for chatting with persons I was really scared to talk with in real life, and that's one way that we are using social media, for instance, to communicate with each other, because we are not comfortable talking with each other and getting to know each other. We are so much in our minds busy with this character that we think is ourselves, that we are actually scared of talking with somebody when going out. Well, you are just looking at that person, you're liking that person, but you are too afraid to talk to that person. And I think that we should see that that's a really that is a problem, but that we also have to do something about it, and that not placing all your trust in, okay, I will communicate with this person through a safe means like a short message or something like Facebook, but get to know each other in real life, because when you see each other, when you hear somebody's voice, everything will be different. Because or at least I know that a lot of my fights during my childhood started on the computer because we didn't see each other's face or didn't hear each other's voices, And that was all because of it was becoming a mind job, all interpreting it through our minds. Our my feelings were more important at that time because I didn't have anything to reflect on but myself. So yeah, that will get out of hand very quickly. And I'm seeing that everybody is getting more scared about this, and also accepting the fact that we are like that in this current world. So I think that we should become aware that this is not the way to go, and that we have to learn or teach ourselves to be comfortable around people and not participate in the thought like, okay, maybe this person think I'm stupid, or maybe think I'm ugly, um, or just the other way around, like I'm really interesting, or I'm really good. This person should talk to me. You know, that's the other kind of polarity reasoning that we use. But just be here, talk to the person, getting to know them on a real level. I think that that's really important to develop in our current days, to not make it a world like we've seen in Her, where we are all caught up in our minds, caught up in our smartphones and such.
That's a really cool perspective, Reginald. And while you were talking, I was actually thinking about solutions, because the truth is that this movie is showing visually the tendency that we have, and it's kind of there's like lessons that we can learn from. There's things that we can actually put a red flag on ourselves to see where we are actually going through those relationship patterns in our own daily lives. But at the same time, for example, the feelings and emotions that at some point Samantha wants to experience, and she's like, actually Theodore says that he gets scared because he thinks he already knows everything that he's going to feel in his own life, and so he feels scared about it, that he's not going to feel anything new. And today's relationships, and from my past, I can see that how it was so based in emotions and feelings. That's all we thought that relationship was about. And that can be quite dangerous, because at some point in your life, you're going to there's no more emotions in stock. So what am I going to do now? And then you start disregarding life and yourself. So then how do you, from your experience within Desteni, what have you been realizing about emotions and feelings?
Okay. Yeah, the emotions and the feelings at the very beginning of my process, like when I first started reading Desteni material was early in 2010, and that was kind of like it was a little bit scary. Like, but this is all I know, and this is all I am. It's like there's such a importance to emotions, because that's like I guess it's like the key core point of my experience in life so far. And what I'm realizing though is that as you start releasing them, you start to see how the emotions were actually like a reactive programming. Whereas like I'd have a stimulus, and then I'd either feel negatively or positively about it. And so that like feeling that I had, it was so like flimsy or whimsical. Whereas like there's like almost nothing to it unless I put myself into it. And even before I got into Desteni stuff, I was like, I was thinking, I was like, if I could just be happy, why don't I always just be happy? And it was like this like ability to choose and see. There's like a way that emotions will only affect me as much as I let them. So if I'm getting really invested in an emotion, or if I feel like I've been wronged and I'm really like mad or sad, the more I think about it and invest myself into that emotion, the more I become it. And it's like not necessary to have a very a joyful life. You can have all these experiences and do all these cool things, but you don't have to get so invested in a mind feeling or emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like some things in this world and in the movie as well, people try to do everything for these feelings, like to fulfill something that in the end it's already there in us, and we are just missing it out. One point as well, and it's about also the process of self-forgiveness and how we use self-forgiveness to work on these emotions, and to realize that it's not the other that is making us feel bad or feel, well, I'm going to quote the movie, because they say that we make each other feel shit about each other, about ourselves. And this is something that we tend to go into blame and blame the other, or feel guilty for harming another person's feelings. But if we go through from the starting point that actually those feelings are a fabrication in our own mind, then working through self-forgiveness, it can actually support us. So this process, do you, at the end of the movie especially, when he is contacting his ex-wife again, and he's almost like in a reconciliation mode, it actually reminded me of self-forgiveness, because he's walking his process throughout the movie, and he's kind of getting to know himself and realizing that he can live without those feelings, kind of, not entirely. But how did self-forgiveness in your life, let's start with Reginald, how it supported you in your relationships?
Well, quite a lot, quite a lot. The reason why is coming back to the previous point is that we all think we are our emotions and feelings, and without them we are nothing, or at least that's what we think. Um, but I was, for instance, also already in the process of standing in the shoes of another, and you will come to realize that, hey, things aren't all that bad or all that good. There are two sides of a coin, and you will get to know that there's a problem then, because you have a feeling and an emotion, and these two cannot combine. You cannot be the two of them at once, and you will get problems, thinking problems, because there's one voice saying, hey, this is good, but another voice is saying, hey, this is bad. And you will get into emotional problems and really personal problems, because you don't know what to do anymore, because normally you would listen to all the voices in your head that you agree with, but what now if you don't, if you cannot choose from one of these two voices? So with self-forgiveness, you will actually take off the emotional energetic charges that you live. So you release the positive and you release the negative, so that it will open up the entire point, and that you can actually see it as one point altogether, and not just from one perspective or the other perspective, and then maybe competing or maybe feeling ashamed that you choose this side or that side. No, just seeing the point as a whole. And self-forgiveness just made me aware that I was able to do that for myself, and that I didn't need anybody else to say to me like, hey, this is the point, you should look at this like that, because I wanted to see it for myself, and the only way to see that for myself was to release it. And another point that assisted me pretty much is that with self-forgiveness, you really have to face what is going on in your mind. Sometimes you have points that you rather do not speak about with other beings, that you keep a secret for yourself. And this you will put into words, and this will also assist you already with facing yourself as what you exist like, and what is going on in your mind, what you are actually all about. And that's really confrontive in some instances, but it will always support you, because yeah, it's stuff that you need to face. It's you. You better deal with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even if a relationship with another ends, you still need to deal with yourself. You're going to live with yourself throughout your whole life. And through self-forgiveness, we give this opportunity for us to face ourselves and then commit ourselves to change and leave that change. So we have a question, and it's from Marlon, and I'm going to read it out loud, and then you guys tell me who's going to answer. And it is, do you consider that the nature of the operating system is self-supportive for self-honesty purposes? And if not, then what would you change in the programming of the OS to make it self-supportive in our processes? Dan, would you like to answer to that?
Yeah, I can do that. The OS, it was not supportive for self-honesty in that I don't think that the OS was fully self-honest with itself. It wasn't able to, it didn't know itself. So it was like this curious child. I don't think that it was able to go online and read through the Destiny material. So I didn't really quite have the referencing for that. But if the program was to be changed to help, you know, the users of the OS, if I'm correct with thinking that, to help them be more self-honest and support themselves in their process, that's totally doable. You know, you can have them, you know, check your emails, or the concept is really cool to be able to have that kind of assistant. And you know, in moments where you are in a reaction, or you haven't done the self-forgiveness yet, so you already swooped up into the mind and the emotions and stuff, the OS can be like, yo, stop. Self-honesty here, like, as what's going on, like, talk it out, tell me what happened, why did it happen, what's going on behind that, what memories are related to this event, why do you feel so strongly here? And so there's like a whole bunch of self-supportive questions that you could ask yourself if you didn't have an operating system, which is really what we have to do.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you are with an agreement, meaning that when you are with a partner that is aware of the process, and please mute your mic, please, then, and then the other is aware, then that works as, not as an operating system, but as a human being, that it's there when you are not aware of yourself. And that's, I found personally very supportive when I go into these moments where I don't give myself the value and I go into distrust or things like that. Then my husband will support me because he's aware, like, look at what you're doing to yourself, and that's a very cool starting point. Reginald, would you like to add anything to Marlon's question? Would you like to answer to it?
Yeah, I would like to add the following, is that, yeah, of course, this program is not self-honest, because it's actually looking for experiences, feelings and emotions, and these things are all also really egoistic. Like I already said in the self-forgiveness statements, is that you will release the positive charges and the negative charges to actually see the whole points. But what this operating system was doing was looking at from one perspective, only her dimension as to what she was feeling, or Theodore was only doing it from his perspective. And if this is not incorporated, like Dan was saying, like it's becoming self-supportive, like asking the real questions, because at times Samantha, the OS, actually did that. Like, okay, just tell me tell me everything that's on your mind. Just talk about it. And you see that Theodore at that time is really confronted or conflicted about telling the secrets about how he's feeling and stuff like that. And if you have a partner who actually understands this process, you can communicate about that and not feeling burdened about if you might hurt that other person, because you are knowing that you are opening up to become better at what you are doing, or becoming better in the relationship, more open, expressive, and that's what you actually want to do. And I think an operating system in that case would be more non-judgmental than persons at this moment. But I think that when people are aware and are walking their own process, then that could be a great support for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's not, especially at the beginning when I was listening to Samantha talking, she was actually showing to Theodore things that he didn't give to himself, like in terms of self-worth, and she actually helped him to publish the book. So that could be an interesting way to push for oneself and say, look, you can be better than what you currently are, so why don't you go for it? Why don't you risk? And at the beginning, she was making him asking questions like, what is life? How do you share yourself with another? And trying to kind of bring those questions back, because we in our lives, we have probably forgotten about it, about what we want to ourselves and from this life. So that's our question. Thank you, Marlon. At the moment, we don't have further questions. Guys, is there any other point, just waiting for more people to ask questions, that this movie shown to you? Like, well, actually, I do have a question, but if you want to go for it and tell me if there's anything that we haven't yet covered here that you would like to bring to this Hangout.
Yeah, of course, there were a lot of points in this movie that the reason why I enjoyed this movie because there were a pretty lot of funny things happening in this movie, and one was already in the beginning, um, where Theodore was standing in the train, and this OS, not Samantha, but this first OS was telling him about emails that he got or news lines. I don't remember it quite that good, but it was was something about the news, and in this news it was said like, sexy actress show provocative photos of her pregnancy, and you see his facial expression like really getting all sneaky and looking at this little book like, okay, I'm going to watch this while he's standing with all these people in in this train, and that was really a funny thing. But what's actually happening after that was you will see him later laying in bed reminiscing about his past relationships, all these pictures and stuff, and then he gets lonely, and then he decides to talk with somebody, and this person he's gonna talk to is yeah, he doesn't know that one. And yeah, of course, in this point, they begin to have a conversation, and it's getting a little bit sexual. And then this person says something outrageous, like, "Okay, I didn't expect that," and I won't tell you what she said, but you have to watch the movie for that. But what was actually interesting in that point was that at that moment when he began visualizing or getting more involved with the conversation, he used that picture that he saw in the train of this girl being pregnant and having sex with that person, and that is actually what we also at Destiny were saying about how we use the mind, and that sex is often a mind job instead of a physical act, because we use what we have seen somewhere and use it to get off to, or yeah, think about, fantasize about. So that's what's quite a cool visualized thing in the movie that I found very funny, but also like, yeah, that is how it is. That's how we use pictures, and that's how we get triggered by these emotions in the media. Like, okay, see, look at this, look at that, and we get stared in a way, but we don't even know it, and that was quite cool to see.
Yeah, and it's actually dangerous because majority of the people is not aware that these images are placed on purpose for you to start being so focused in your mind that you will disregard everything around you, and even your relationships that are just there, and you spend more time in your mind rather than in the physical reality and making this world a better place.
Yeah.
Dan, would you like to add anything to it?
Not really. You guys pretty much said it. It's just that, we're loading our minds with pictures, and then they come out later when we're fantasizing, and that's not self-honesty. That's not self-intimacy. That's not real self-expression. It's a mind job.
Yeah. There's one last point while we don't have any further questions. At some point in the movie, there is this game called the Perfect Mom game, and where they actually, just as you said, Reginald, in the media, people tell us what to imagine, which images you have to follow, how do you behave, what is to be a perfect mom. And so you have that game where you have to make points, like to bring muffins to the school or be the first to arrive so you are the super mom, and all these pressures that we already have, but in this movie is so well portrayed, like it's there, and we don't need software to show us that we are already doing this to ourselves. We are competing with the other moms rather than learning with each other, and it's actually valid. So it's in the movie, actually, they use an expression which is a social acceptable insanity, and these are all the relationships we have. So what any other thoughts that you got from this specific, the Perfect Mom game, that you want to bring to discussion?
I didn't see it as like something too crazy, but I do know what you're saying, and it's like the movie does a good job at showing that, that's the kind of thoughts or backchat that moms would have. It's like, what do I have to do? There's kind of like this uncertainty and needing to make sure that you're the best mom so that you can prevent your fears of your child growing up wrong or bad or hurting themselves. And so, we put that pressure on ourselves. And in this movie, the whole movie is kind of about what we do in our minds, especially in relationships. And so in relation for a mother to her kids, that game shows that kind of process to a degree, at least that dimension of it.
Yeah, I also would like to add something about that, because what I actually saw in that point of that girl making that video game was the point of stereotypes and how we actually try to fit in with these stereotypes. And it's like this mom is like being a mom is like a job. And I saw that point then referencing to our current society, where we all are doing our jobs and do not have any time to enjoy ourselves, but are in this competition to get better than anybody else. And through that way, we are trying to survive. But there's no real expression within that. And that was actually what I was seeing in this video game that they were making, that they were even making it a game. Like, it was so normal to think like that, and that was what I found curious about that point, actually. Yeah.
And it's funny because then you were saying that like moms are more worried about being called the perfect moms rather than actually becoming and getting to know themselves. And at the beginning, when he was installing the iOS system, the program asked him, what is your relationship with your mom? So these things are no coincidence in the movie, and if we start digging, we can see that he was telling that his mom was actually, he didn't want to care about him, she was just talking about herself. So it's actually, like, in a way, the software was, the perfect mom game was showing that for you to be a perfect mom is what you need to do, but actually, in reality, we are not even giving the attention to the children. For example, we're not helping them to transcend their own fears, to know themselves, to actually talk in self-honesty with each other, get to know each other. So I found that was a really interesting point in terms of mom relationships, that as part of this movie, which is so much about relationships, they didn't miss that. But obviously we need to comment a little bit on that.
The thing with the moms, I just wanted to add quickly that it seemed, or it's like there's this not an equal relationship with the kids. It's like we all want equality, but moms tend to focus on that point more through like a fear. It's like, I gotta be a certain way so that my kid will have the best opportunity, and it's a justified fear because they want the best for their kids, and that's like noble, but letting the kids explore and discover for themselves, what works and what doesn't. Yeah, there's a lot of parenting support on eQuaf as well, and I would recommend that if you're a new parent, especially. It's very cool stuff. The ways that you can parent through leading and asking questions, and letting a kid direct their life. It's awesome.
I also want to add something about it, because that was a curious point that you were saying. Like, he was talking about his mom and when he was installing that OS, and he was saying like, yeah, but she was always talking about herself. And later in the movie, he was conversating with Samantha, the OS, and then he began talking about himself, and Samantha was saying then like, hey, but I thought I was talking about my feelings, not about yours. So herein you will see that dynamic of that you are actually living the patterns that you have seen in your lives, and that you really have to get to know yourselves instead of like blaming the other person, like, you did that in my childhood, you were not a good parent, because we have seen pretty much real good examples that we kids become our parents, and that judging them doesn't work. So if you want to do it a better job, or have some things that you didn't like about your parents, don't be calling them names or being really mad at them. Just know these are patterns that exist in your family, and through self-forgiveness and writing about the point and getting to know yourself, you can actually stop these patterns. That was what I actually saw from the point that you mentioned.
That's a great perspective. And thanks, Dan, for also mentioning the CAF interview. The parenting support are amazing, and we definitely suggest those. So, guys, we are reaching almost the hour, and just before we leave, is there any other thoughts that you would like for those that will watch the movie? I personally suggest that you have a notebook so you can take note of any emotions that you may come across, and then rediscover those for yourself. Write about that, if necessary. Like start the DIP light course so you know how to deal with those emotions in a very structured and supportive way. Anything else that you would like to add, guys, for tonight?
Well, I wrote two sentences down, which I found quite appealing in this movie, which I would like to share. That was that this girl said that we spend a third of our lives asleep, and maybe that's even the time that we feel most free. I found that interesting because in this movie, actually, it's all about this our experience of love and how our experience are limiting ourselves. Even Samantha would say at the time that our physical body is limiting ourselves, and that is what a lot of people in this world are actually experiencing and wanting to fight for freedom and wanting to be free. Um, but we never actually stand still by the fact that maybe it's us as thinking that are limiting ourselves, and that we feel free or seeking comfort in our sleep just because we are not comfortable when we are awake, that we are constantly trying to place ourselves in our prison as stereotypes, our prison as our fears about other people. That was something that I found interesting and a really good point to mention here. And then there was also another phrase that was said, and that was that the past is just a story that we tell ourselves. Now, this is also very interesting because isn't it that our past is like a story that we tell ourselves? Mostly it is, because okay, we did experience our past and we did some physical things, but we get messed up about things how we experienced ourselves in our childhood, or what we actually experienced somewhere 5 years ago, and we will make it a story which we feel comfortable with. And that doesn't mean that it's a good story, but it's a good enough story for yourself to fit within your ideas. Maybe you want to feel yourself like shit because you feel comfortable being and playing that character, or you feel if you tell yourself some amazing story about how great you were, but it wasn't like that. Um, so this is also necessary, this point of self-honesty in our lives, um, to develop. And that's why I always suggest to people when they have things they want to find out, or want to direct in their lives, is to start writing and write and get that story which you live out there on paper, so you can actually see what you live, and not make it some pretty movie that you are that you are living, because maybe it's just a story that you live, but this story uh, will influence your whole life. So make sure that it's the real story, and if the story is not something that you would like to share with other people, make sure you change it. Make sure you change your life, because we are all capable of that. And I think that that was maybe one of the things that I found most important to tell everybody in this hangout, that we can actually change through really sharing ourselves and standing open. Because yeah, what is this movie about? About not communicating with each other. Yeah, and this is the result that we got.
That's a those were all great points, Reginald. It's like I couldn't agree more. And Dan, would you like to add anything else to it?
Yeah, just a final thought. You know, for the girls and the guys out there that are not in a relationship yet, like this is a cute movie and it's kind of cool, but it's not it's a fiction movie. It's this perfect relationship like that. It doesn't happen. It's not real. As much as you want it to be real, and you could even spend your whole life searching for it, that's not a cool starting point. You really want to create the perfect relationship with another person, and it's going to take a lot of work to do that. It's not something that's going to be glorious and amazing from the beginning. So definitely look more into the agreement process and redefining words and everything that Desteni shares, because it's extremely supportive to creating an awesome life with another individual as well.
Yeah, and actually, as you said, it all starts by oneself. That's the point that we want to bring people to become aware that if one doesn't know oneself and doesn't change oneself, then anything in reality is going to concretely change. And you can have many relationships, but the same patterns will come again and again until you finally face yourself and start stopping. Then can you mute your phone, please? It's just that I'm hearing me twice. And then, so just to conclude now, is that Samantha already exists in our own heads. We already have a mind consciousness system that talks for us, that tells us what we should think or what we shouldn't think. And now what we can do is actually, okay, recognize that there is this mind consciousness system within us. There's these thoughts. Where do they come from? How has your past limited our own thinking? And how can we move it from that starting point of self-investigation and, as Reginald said, self-change? Just a final comment we got from Marlon, and it's saying that it's a very necessary point to clarify then that's not the way to go to seek mind relationships. Wonderful. That's very good. Thank you, Marlon, for participating and joining us on the Hangout. Thanks, everyone. And next week, we'll have Victor to cover another movie night Hangout. And thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.